Welcome to today's deep dive. I am your host, here to guide you through the material.
And I'm the resident expert, ready to break down the psychology behind today's topic.
And today, we are pulling from a fascinating and honestly, a deeply unsettling script provided by Obscure Case File.
Really is. It's heavy.
Yeah. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore a phenomenon known as pro-social manipulation. We are going to look at the psychology of people who essentially weaponize kindness.
Right.
We'll examine the evolutionary biology that makes us so vulnerable to this, the historical extremes of the behavior, and, well, the mechanics of how it operates quietly in our daily lives.
Because the ultimate goal here is to uncover why the most dangerous people you will ever meet are rarely the ones who actually seem threatening.
Exactly. They're the ones who seem the nicest.
It's a profound shift in perspective, really. When we think of a threat, we usually condition ourselves to look for aggression or hostility or overt cruelty.
You look for the guy yelling in the street.
Exactly. But the architecture of true deception relies on bypassing those alarms entirely.
So I want you, the listener, to think about the nicest person you know. The one who never forgets a birthday, who volunteers for the worst shifts, who, never utters a negative word about anyone.
This seems too good to be true.
Right. But I want you to ask yourself a question. Have you ever felt inexplicably drained in their presence? Have you ever felt this vague, heavy unease that you couldn't really justify? Or maybe you've noticed a strange pattern where things always seem to mysteriously fall apart for the people closest to them, yet this incredibly nice person always emerges utterly spotless.
Universally beloved.
Universally beloved.
That dissonance between public perfection and a private sense of unease, that is often the first faint signal of pro-social manipulation.
It's terrifying when you actually realize it.
It is. We're talking about individuals who have learned to speak the language of human connection flawlessly, not because they feel it, but because they understand its utility.
To really grasp how this works, I want you to hold on to a specific image for this deep dive, the concept of the Trojan horse.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. It's this massive, beautiful gift left outside the gates of a fortified city. It looks like a gesture of peace. It's polished, it's impressive, it's completely disarming.
But its entire function is to be hollow.
Yes. It is a vessel designed specifically to smuggle destruction past the gates while the guards are literally celebrating.
Whoa. Yeah.
We are going to explore how a perfectly crafted exterior of kindness is used to smuggle in control and harm. But to understand why we open the gates and pull the horse inside so willingly, we have to look at our own wiring. Why are we so eager to trust a smile?
Well, you have to look at the evolutionary history of the human brain for that. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, survival was entirely dependent on group cohesion.
Right. If you were cast out of the tribe, you died.
Exactly. In those early social environments, cooperative, agreeable individuals were essential for the group's survival. If someone was sharing their food, helping to build shelter, displaying warmth, they signaled safety.
They were the safe harbor.
Yes. And over millennia, our brains developed an instinctual shortcut. We evolved to subconsciously equate niceness with safety and charm with competence. It is an automatic, deeply ingrained survival heuristic.
So the moment we see the performative warmth, our brain just bypasses critical thought and floods the system with a friend, not foe signal.
And certain psychological profiles are uniquely equipped to exploit that specific heuristic. The source material delves into a personality cluster known in psychology as the dark triad.
Right. Narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy.
Correct. Narcissism provides the insatiable need for admiration. Machiavellianism is the calculated worldview where other people are just chess pieces. And psychopathy is characterized by a profound lack of effective empathy and an absence of remorse.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second because I really want to push back on this.
Go ahead.
We are talking about individuals devoid of empathy, people who fundamentally view others as objects. Are we really saying that lacking the core components of human connection somehow makes them better at faking it? It seems completely counterintuitive. Wouldn't someone with no empathy be terrible at appearing warm?
It seems like they should be, yes. But the reality is chillingly opposite.
Oh, so?
Well, when you or I interact with someone, we are burdened by actual emotions. We feel social anxiety. We worry about overstepping. We feel genuine sadness if we see someone hurting.
Yeah, we second-guess ourselves.
Exactly. All of those genuine emotions create friction. They make us hesitate. They make us awkward. An individual high in psychopathic traits experiences none of that emotional friction. For them, human interaction is merely a data entry problem. They observe what makes people trust them, a certain tilt of the head, a specific tone of voice, a well-timed favor, and they simply replicate it.
So they aren't feeling the interaction at all. They are just acting in a play where they wrote the script.
And they are incredibly compelling actors. The script cites a landmark study published in the journal Personality and Individual Differences. Researchers had strangers evaluate individuals who scored high in psychopathic traits.
And what did they find?
The results consistently showed that these individuals were rated as significantly more attractive, more charming, and more charismatic than the average person.
That is deeply unsettling.
It is. Their total lack of genuine empathy didn't hinder them. It actually freed them to perform confidence and charm flawlessly. Dr. Robert Hare, who's the pioneering researcher on psychopathy, famously termed this the mask of sanity.
The mask of sanity. So the predator doesn't hide in the shadows looking monstrous. They hide in plain sight, looking like your friendly neighbor or your colleague.
Precisely. The niceness is a tactical camouflage.
Which brings us to a terrifying problem for you, the listener. If the camouflage is flawless, how can you possibly tell a predator from a genuinely good person? If the wooden horse looks exactly like a real gift, what are the mechanics of spotting the trap?
The key is looking past the surface behavior and analyzing the underlying drive. You have to look at the cost of the kindness.
Okay, break that down for us.
On a behavioral level, genuine kindness and performed kindness look identical. Both involve helping, smiling, giving. The divergence happens in the mechanics of why the action is occurring.
The motivation.
Right. Genuine kindness is fundamentally unconditional. It does not keep a ledger. It operates even when there is zero benefit to the giver. And most importantly, it happens when the theater is empty.
When no one is watching. Whereas performed kindness is purely a transaction.
Exactly. It's a business deal disguised as a favor. It is always in service of securing access, controlling an image, or creating leverage. The sources outline a pattern called selective kindness, which illustrates this perfectly.
That's where they're incredibly warm in public, but the people in their private life are walking on eggshells, right?
Yes, selective kindness is highly directional. The warmth is deployed strategically upwards or outwards toward bosses, community leaders, new acquaintances with social capital.
But if you watch how they treat a waiter,
Or a subordinate, or a family member behind closed doors, the warmth just evaporates. The performance is only maintained where there is an audience or a benefit.
the other pattern mentioned in the files is something called kindness with receipts. And this one, I mean, it's just so insidious.
It really is the core of the manipulation.
It's like a hidden credit card bill.
Yeah.
You think you are receiving a free gift, right? A favor, a listening ear, but you are actually racking up high-interest debt that the manipulator is going to eventually force you to pay.
That hidden credit card bill analogy captures the psychological weight of it perfectly. Every single act of generosity is being meticulously cataloged in their mind. The ledger is always running.
And when do they usually cash it in?
Usually when you try to assert a boundary or say no to a demand, that's when the receipts are produced. You will hear things like, after everything I've done for you, or I was the only one there for you.
Wow. So suddenly the kindness is weaponized to induce guilt and enforce compliance. To truly grasp the devastating potential of that hidden price tag, the case files take us into some extreme historical territory. When this pro-social manipulation is taken to its absolute darkest conclusion.
We see how exceptional performed niceness provides the ultimate body armor for unspeakable acts.
The primary example the source material examines is the case of John Wayne Gacy.
Right. In the 1970s, to the outside world, Gacy was the epitome of a pillar of the community. He was a successful contractor. He threw these lavish summer parties for his entire neighborhood.
He was active in politics too, wasn't he?
Heavily involved in local politics in the Jaycees. And he famously volunteered to dress as a clown to entertain sick children at local hospitals. His public persona was entirely constructed around civic duty and generosity.
And while he was building this impenetrable fortress of goodwill, he was murdering 33 young men and boys, burying the vast majority of them directly beneath his own house.
It's almost impossible to comprehend. But what is crucial to understand about the Gacy case is the function of his niceness. It wasn't a quirk.
Yeah.
It was an active defense mechanism.
Right, because he was so universally viewed as a good guy, people naturally overlooked the red flags.
Even as police began investigating him, many of his neighbors and colleagues vehemently defended him. They experienced profound cognitive dissonance. Their brains simply could not reconcile the generous man who threw neighborhood barbecues with the reality of a serial killer.
The mask was so effective that it bought him years of freedom.
It really did.
And the script brings up Ted Bundy as well, operating on a very similar frequency. Bundy was notoriously handsome, articulate, and deeply charming.
Very disarming.
But the detail that always stands out in these files, and this is just chilling, is his extracurricular activities. He volunteered at a suicide prevention hotline in Seattle.
Yes. He worked directly alongside a former police officer who later wrote a book about him. She described Bundy as kind, solicitous, and empathetic to the callers in crisis.
He was literally practicing empathy on people in crisis.
Exactly. Bundy used that environment to study human vulnerability at its most raw. He was observing how empathy sounds, how it functions, so he could mimic it more effectively when luring his victims.
These aren't just wolves in sheep's clothing. They're wolves running the Sheep Rescue Center.
That is a very dark, very accurate way to put it.
It's the most horrifying irony imaginable. They intentionally position themselves at the exact intersection of high vulnerability and implicit trust. Now, obviously, Bundy and Gacy represent the most extreme, statistically rare manifestations of this.
Right. They are the far end of the spectrum.
But the chilling reality of this deep dive is how this extreme principle scales down to the quiet, sustained damage happening in everyday offices and living rooms. You don't need a body count to destroy a family.
No, you don't. The quiet manipulators using these tactics are operating right now in corporate boardrooms, on PTA committees, and in romantic relationships.
The damage is emotional, psychological, and often financial. So the question becomes, how do you spot the architecture of this manipulation before it traps you?
Psychologists have identified 6 specific behavioral patterns that function as structural red flags. We can walk through them.
Let's weave through these, because the source material lays them out not as isolated quirks, but as an interconnected system of control. The first major tell goes back to the idea of the theater. Sign number 1. Kindness needs an audience.
Right. The performance requires a stage. If the generosity only manifests when there are witnesses to applaud it, you are looking at a performance, not a personality trait.
You have to see what happens when the spotlight turns off.
Exactly. A pro-social manipulator will often engineer situations where their good deeds are highly visible, ensuring they extract maximum social credit.
Which feeds perfectly into sign number 2, playing the victim. When the facade inevitably slips, the universally nice person is mysteriously never at fault.
The deflection is an absolute art form. They manage to constantly center themselves as the injured party. They collect sympathy like currency.
So by playing the martyr, they preemptively discredit anyone who might expose them.
Yes. If you try to point out their behavior, they have already primed the social group to view them as a fragile victim, which inherently makes you look like the aggressor.
Okay, here is where it gets really interesting to me. Sign number 3. The case files focus heavily on the state of the manipulator's inner circle. I want you, the listener, to do a mental audit of the seemingly perfect people you know.
Look past them and look at the people closest to them.
Yes, because if the person is universally adored, but their spouse or oldest friends seem mysteriously shrunken or hypervigilant, that dissonance is the loudest alarm bell you can hear.
It is often the most reliable diagnostic tool you have. When you look at the spouse or children of a pro-social manipulator, what do you see? Do they seem relaxed and thriving? Or do they look perpetually exhausted and strangely diminished?
Why does that happen exactly? What is mechanically causing the spouse to look like they are shrinking, while the manipulator is just glowing with public praise?
It is the devastating toll of holding 2 conflicting realities at once. The inner circle is subjected to the private cruelty, the gaslighting, the control, the emotional coldness, but they are forced to live in a world that constantly tells them how lucky they are to be with such a wonderful person.
Oh, wow. The isolation must be unbearable.
It is. If the wife tries to complain about her husband's emotional abuse, the community responds with, "But he's such a great guy. He does so much for the charity." The sheer exhaustion of having their reality constantly invalidated is what causes that anxious demeanor.
That brings us to sign number 4, subtle indebtedness. We talked about the hidden credit card bill. This is where the ledger of favors is always in their favor.
Right. They might do something small, but they will reference it casually months later just to ensure you remember your place in the ledger. It creates a perpetual power imbalance.
And sign number 5 pairs with that nicely, or rather darkly. Inconsistent empathy.
In public, they perform deep compassion for a tragedy on the news. But if you come to them with a genuine problem that requires them to sacrifice their own time or money without public recognition,
the compassion just vanishes the moment it costs them something.
instantly. Because true empathy is a state of being. Performed empathy is a tool. When the tool is no longer useful, they put it away.
Which leads us to the sixth and final sign, confused perceptions. This is when your gut feels uneasy despite everyone else's praise.
You must learn to honor that unease. The human subconscious is an incredibly powerful processing engine. It picks up on micro-expressions, subtle inconsistencies in tone, predatory body language, long before the conscious brain can articulate a reason.
So if your gut feels inexplicably unsafe around someone who appears perfectly safe, your subconscious has likely detected the mask.
Exactly.
But if all these patterns exist, if the inner circle is visibly suffering, if the empathy is inconsistent, why do our brains refuse to see them until it's too late? Why does a community defend John Wayne Gacy?
The source material highlights 3 massive psychological blind spots that work against our perception. The first is the halo effect.
Assuming one good trait means they have absolute integrity.
Right. We take one overwhelmingly positive trait like exceptional charm or generosity, and we unconsciously assume it guarantees other positive traits. Our brains want simplicity. We think, he is so nice at the office, therefore he must be an honest, safe person.
The halo of niceness blinds us to the red flags.
Then we run into the wall of social proof. Human beings are social creatures. When we see an entire group implicitly trusting someone, we feel intense psychological pressure to conform to that consensus. We defer to the group.
It's like being the only person in an audience who isn't clapping at a magic show. From your angle, you saw the trick, you see the hidden wires. But 1,000 other people are giving a standing ovation.
Exactly.
To stand up and point the finger at the town hero feels socially dangerous. You look like the crazy person, so you doubt your own eyes, you sit back down, and you clap along.
That is exactly how they insulate themselves. They weaponize the crowd against the individual skeptic. And if you do manage to see through the illusion, you hit the final barrier, sunk cost.
Right, the painful reality of admitting you were manipulated after investing years of trust and love.
By the time the mask fully slips, you have often invested years of your life, your emotions, your finances into this person. To admit you were manipulated is to admit that the last 5 years of your marriage or your career were built on a mirage.
It requires a shattering of the ego. It's often much less painful in the short term to just keep believing the lie.
It is.
So where does this leave you, the listener? Once you understand the mechanics of the dark triad, how do you apply this without becoming a cynical hermit who distrusts every nice gesture? Because genuine kindness makes the world go round.
The antidote to manipulation is not cynicism. It is discernment.
Discernment.
Yes. It means shifting your focus from isolated moments of charm to long-term patterns of behavior. You watch how they treat the powerless. You pay attention to what happens when they don't get their way.
And you prioritize your own gut instincts over the crowd's applause?
Precisely.
So what does this all mean for you? It means that protecting your relationship with your own perception of reality is your greatest defense. Acknowledging that kindness can be weaponized is what keeps you safe.
You could accept the gift, but you check the horse for hollow spaces.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over on your own. If these dark triad manipulators are incredibly skilled at reading what we want in order to perfectly mimic it, maybe our best defense is brutally examining our own vulnerabilities.
That is a powerful point.
Ask yourself, what is the specific type of niceness or validation you are most desperate to receive from others? Because whatever that unhealed void is, whatever you are most desperate to hear, that is the exact shape the Trojan horse will take when it shows up at your door.